let's move on and talk about the skills that you have to get. I came up with these skills after working with students for a long period of time. When they come to me and they thinking about, okay, so I'm struggling to determine the purpose of my study. And based on that, I ask them some questions that will help them to determine the focus of their study. I ask them questions that will help them to determine the research question that they have, and also the methodology and the data source, and also data collection strategy, and the need to collect rich data, analyze and present the findings, and also interpret the findings, and promote the use of the findings. So these are the things that I'm going to talk about based on my experience, how I help students to gain those skills. And I hope you're going to also be able to gain this skill and going to help you in your research. So the first one is to determine the focus on the study. So as a qualitative researcher, you have to be able to determine the focus. So how do you determine the focus of the study? There are 4 things that you have to think about: the interest about the subject matter or the topic, what you want to achieve, the source of the data, and what you hope to achieve or expectation, right? When I meet a student, first I ask them, what are you interested in? And I ask them, what is the problem that you want to address in the study? And what is lacking in the literature that needs to be addressed? So in terms of interest, these are the 3 questions that I ask them. And based on these 3 questions, it will help them to think about, okay, this is my interest, this is the problem I've seen in the literature, and this is what I have to do. So these are the questions that you could ask yourself to help you to know the purpose or the focus of your study. So let me give you an example, right? And this one, you don't have to focus on one area. You just have to brainstorm. You are in a brainstorming stage, right? You are thinking about the potential topic of interest, and then you can go on and think about the focus. So let's assume that we are interested in happiness, right? And maybe you want to know what makes people happy, right? Or you want to find out the factors that contribute to happiness. You want to know what the happiness looks like, the journey to a happy life, or stresses surrounding the quest to be happy, and what makes people happy at the workplace. So maybe these are the areas in relation to happiness that you are interested in. So think about what you are interested in, and then list them. Just list them. I think that's the best way to start thinking about the focus. So the next one is, what is the problem that you plan to address in the study? You can say that it is the lack of understanding about how happiness leads to work performance. There's a lot of study that shows there's a connection between being happy and doing well at workplace, improving your work performance. But maybe not a lot of study demonstrate how happiness leads to work performance, right? So maybe you want to do research to help you understand what is really going on. Or the second one will be, you have seen that there's not a lot of happiness at the workplace, and you want to maybe explore and find out what is really going on. Why are people not happy at work? That might be your problem that you want to address. Or there's limited information on how to make people happy, feel happy at work. So you see how asking these questions will help you to come up with ideas that will help you to, at the end, develop the purpose of the study. Another one, what is lacking in the literature? All these are practical problems. Maybe you have seen it, you have experienced it, you have heard it, but you have to go back to the literature, because if you are doing a traditional research, you want to contribute to the field. Before you contribute, you have to know what has been done. You cannot just take a topic or identify a problem and say, oh, I'm going to do research to address the lack of understanding about how happiness leads to. Maybe there's a lot of study that have been done concerning that. So it's good to look into the literature, see what has been done, and then based on that, you can identify a specific gap, right? Let's say looking through the literature, you realize that there's lack of knowledge or information about how maybe happiness leads to work performance, or there has been a lot of research that have been done in quantitative studies or using quantitative approach, but there's limited research done using qualitative approach. So you're going to do research using a different methodology, right? That's called the methodology gap. You are either, maybe there's a contradiction in terms of what is happening. Maybe some researchers use qualitative approach and they got a different results compared to other researchers who use quantitative approach. So you want to maybe do a qualitative study to fill that or to address that contradiction, because you are focusing on methodology. You're trying to use a different methodology. Let's say the same topic has been done in one country or one city, but you want to do the same research in another city or another country or another location, right? That would be a population gap that you want to fill. Empirical evidence gap. This is more of, let's say there's been a lot of research concerning the topic, but maybe there's contradictions concerning the findings or the evidence, right? So you want to do research to maybe understand what is really going on, right? And when you get a PowerPoint and you get a reference, there's an article on this that will help you to know the differences. So this is just a brief information, right? So as I said, knowing your interest means that you know what you're interested about, you think about the problem that is related to the interest, and you go back to the literature and try to identify a gap that you could fill. So the next one is the want, right? So what do you want to do in this study? What do you want? So that's what I ask students. What do you want to do? Sometimes you may not have answers. That's fine. But all these are to guide you, to help you to come to the final stage of determining the purpose of the study, right? Then you have to think about the data source, right? Who do you want to get data from? So in this topic, maybe I'm focusing on happiness, right? I have to think about, okay, based on the problem and the gap I've seen in the literature, who do I want to collect data from? What kind of data do I plan to collect? Where do you want to collect the data? And how do you plan to collect the data? So these questions will help you to come up with the data source, right? So that you'll be able to do the study. So the last one is the hope. So what do you want to see? And what do you hope to gain from this study? Sometimes people say, at the end of this study, I want to make sure participant problems have been solved. So based on that, you have to think about, okay, maybe you have to do action research and maybe understand the problem that participants are facing before you think about the solutions. So in case you have your findings, what do you want to use the findings for? Who are the stakeholders? Who will benefit from your findings? Thinking about all these things will help you to come up with a good focus on the study. As I said earlier on concerning what qualitative study is all about, you have to think about the purpose of the study, right? So the purpose is all about what you intend to do in the study. Based on all these questions that I've asked, you'll be able to choose any of these areas, and that will help you to construct the purpose of this. So the purpose might be just to describe a specific phenomenon. The purpose can be just to explore, right? The purpose can be just to understand, right? So these are the things that you have to think about. So let's go. Based on the example I gave, this is what I came up with. The purpose of the qualitative study is to explore from the perspective of healthcare providers living in Columbia, Maryland, what it means to be happy at the workplace. So I chose Columbia, Maryland, because it's one of the happiest cities in the US. So I just want to understand what it means to be happy at the workplace. And the place that I might be able to get participants to talk to might be Columbia, Maryland. You see how I'm looking for a place that there's high probability for me to get access to participants to talk to, because my focus is to understand what is happiness in the workplace. So you see, so based on all these questions, I was able to come up with the purpose of the study. So that's the same thing that you could do when you have a specific topic and you want to do a qualitative study. If you ask yourself all these questions, you'll be able to come up with the purpose. So the end result is come up with the purpose of the study.